All right, we're live. So hi everyone. Welcome to the Pyroscope community call. This is my first time on it doing it this way. And of course, I have my video going off in the background for YouTube. Yay. So yeah, I have Nicole, who is also a developer advocate.
Did you just see that camera fall from my shelf? I don't know what happened. There's no one there.
We
Hi, I'm
mostly could
Nicole
hear
van
it.
der Hoeven. This is a great start. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm from Loki. I'm here to ask all the questions about Pyroscope because I have only used Pyroscope cursorily, so I'm excited to learn more. And today we also have a new guest. Well, probably not new to me mostly. Christian.
Yeah, I'm definitely new to Stream Deck, I guess. I think I might. Before
It's
we always use Google
StreamYard.
Meet, StreamYard. Oh, sorry. But yeah, no.
This
I'm
is a
happy to
stream
speak
deck.
about. I'm happy to speak about what we have in kind of in our plans for Pyroscope, and obviously answer any questions. I guess it's also on the stream. But yeah.
Awesome. I will put it so that we can see your screen.
Perfect. So just going quickly through the agenda. So I'm basically want to talk about the immediate roadmap. So we mostly planning quarters, and so we kind of started just in a quarter, and we also happened to have most of the team kind of on site last week, and we were talking a few kind of higher level plans, but also kind of details. So yeah, I also see Agile is on the stream. I'm in London as well, so definitely find me at the next profiling meetup if it exists. Yeah, so our immediate roadmap. Let's look at that. So in kind of a lot of work has gone into metrics from profiles features. So it's kind of a ruler to write out metrics from profiles direct into Prometheus, and you can then, I guess, put some alerts on top of it. Just use basically it as any other metric, and we basically like to extend that feature. Right now, you can kind of export the whole of a particular flame graph. So you would in this kind of quick example here, you would just export 23 minutes, and we want to make it possible to basically go on a sub function and kind of export that. So that is maybe interesting for some runtime insights, or basically if you want to understand maybe how a library is used in your services, you can kind of use that feature as well. So that's in development. We have some backend work that kind of is promising already. Now I guess it's about productionizing it and also making it available in the UI. Yeah. So another side, another thing we want to do, it's also kind of in flight right now. We want to be able to kind of symbolize profiles that are not symbolized. So again, symbolization. I'm going back to this example flame graph. In this case, it means that we have strings, we have function names, we have package names, and if they're not symbolized, we would see hex address lines. And it's kind of common that for some binaries, to reduce their size, you would strip that information off, and so we might not be able to collect it at the time when we collect the profile. And with server-side symbolization, we basically can then bring that information. So there's basically different sources where Linux distributions might push that information, and we can kind of pull it from there. So we also have something working. We basically have think it's not quite there yet to be used. So we want to kind of complete basically how that debug format, which is mostly dwarf, can be converted in a better format for our use case. And currently, we also don't support line numbers and understand how functions are inlined. That's something we basically want to fix this quarter. Another big thing is for us currently label names are somewhat limited in characters that you can use. So most missed is the dot to kind of align with OpenTelemetry semconf. So you might have seen that we use service underscore name. And basically, like, we want to be able basically that you can use any emoji kind of label name as well as the kind of dot that is probably mostly missed. I think that would align us better with OTel and also make sure when you jump between signals, like for us, it's most painful with traces, which is obviously very the starting point of OTel was traces, and there we need to kind of do some form of conversion and just assume that service underscore name means what service dot name means. Yeah, this is something we'd like to fix. We have to maybe do some minor API changes, but I guess most of the work will have to go into Grafana and our
Can I ask a
builder
question?
UI. Of
Or do
course,
you
yeah.
want me to hold it?
No,
What happens
everyone.
now? Like now, what is happening now that it hasn't been relaxed yet? What if somebody does have a label name that doesn't? That maybe if they are using OTel conventions.
Yeah, so like if you actually use the OTel endpoint, we kind of convert everything to underscore that doesn't match the scheme, and which obviously can be looseless. Like I don't know, can't be looseless. So we will lose some information. I don't know if you have a minus and a plus, it might both become underscore and might even conflict with each other. So like this is already kind of a problem. In other areas, so Grafana Alloy, currently you would just basically get an error. This is not a valid label name. So I guess the first step for us is to support that on the Pyroscope end, and then we kind of need to communicate that it's supported and then address all the API consumers like Alloy. I guess the only thing where it's a bit more uh, yeah, like a bit more easier to change is just this kind of converting behavior we have for the hotel compatible endpoint. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and I guess the kind of label selector that we kind of adapted from Prometheus and PropQL, that basically will change in a very similar way as Prometheus. So you would need to quote now label names if you want to use one of those kind of extra character set. Yeah, I think some work has already been done. Like the next step is kind of about communicating that it's available. Our backends will add feature flags, and then hopefully, like one release from now or two releases from now, it should be ready kind of to use, and then we can work on our consumers like Alloy and the profiling SDKs.
So Christian, if someone is
Mhm.
already using OTel now, they're coursing everything through the OTLP endpoint, and right now those labels are being converted into the dots are being converted to underscores. Then does that mean that potentially they might need to reconfigure their dashboards?
Yes, like that is definitely part of the problem. When we that's why we want to kind of change it early. So our OTel endpoint, I don't have numbers, but I think it is rarely used. And so like there's definitely kind of basically that step that either we kind of copy each label to have it both with the old and the new name, or we would have that kind of breaking change that you mentioned. So basically, like our hope is that we do a breaking change, but that it kind of is not as impacting as it maybe is for other databases with a much higher OTel endpoint usage. But I think that's maybe also why the time is now. The OTel format for profiles is still changing, so I think I don't want to discourage usage of it, but there's basically like still a couple more planned changes that will change quite a lot. And like I guess we at least currently can only support one model for hotel, and that is kind of the latest. So I do think I would maybe hold off for another 3-6 months until like those changes have been basically like finalized and there's a bit more stability there. But obviously, like I definitely also think use it and report the problems you have, because that's the only way we make sure the format will be right in the end. Okay. So I'd like to speak a bit longer about the source code integration. You might hear maybe about it for the first time. So we called it before the GitHub integration, but we definitely do realize there are other vendors out there for storing your Git repositories, and it might not always be Git, I guess, in the future. So we definitely want to make it a lot more generic. Right now, the only supported uh, kind of Git host is GitHub, but we definitely are interested if you want us to kind of support or drop everything we do and support GitLab as well. Definitely let us know. We get asked a few questions, but what is always good to have some extra numbers and some extra voices heard. So basically, the idea is currently in a profile, we often kind of represent things as a flame graph. So um, this is profiles drill down. If you're not familiar, you would kind of first select, you would start here, and then kind of select the service you actually want to look into its profiles, and then you most likely jump to the flame graph. And in the flame graph, each kind of box represents one function, but you can't really go further in. Let's say if you have a function that kind of has multiple places where it kind of consumes CPU, you might not necessarily know which one it is. And in this example, I'm just going to pick this kind of unnamed main function here. So we can see that there's 16.8 minutes of CPU time spent. And now if I click on function details, what actually happens, it kind of breaks down this CPU usage within that anonymous function here, and basically annotates the source code where this is actually kind of been contributed from within this particular function. In order for that to work, the basically profiles need to have we need to know basically what to look for. So that's why we have the Git repo as a label on there, and we also need to understand maybe which version you're running. So that's why you have a Git reference. I guess in this case it is head. So we will always use the latest for this demo here. And that basically will give us enough information to kind of fetch and associate the line information that we have from the profiles with the source code. You will also find there's, for example, libraries outside of your code base that we can also uh, fetch the source code for. So that is using the feature currently works only with Go. And in this case, it's because it's heavily tied to the language you want to profile in. Because in this case, we have to go into the Go mod, figure out where we might get that source code from, and then obviously get that source code and display it to you. And there's obviously different versions at play. And so it's definitely kind of a bit of work to get a new language working. And that's also something we'd like to hear from you. What should be the next language we look into? One of the kind of problems you might face is that not all languages have even the line information. So without line and file information, we obviously don't really know what to display. The Go pprof endpoints, they do support full line numbers, in the same way also our SDKs make use of that information and send it on. Currently, eBPF is not supported, but it is possible. It's also in our plans to do that. It is kind of a similar work item what I was mentioned before with the inline and line information from the symbolization. So basically, once we can do that, we can also do that as part of the eBPF profiling. So
You know what other is it
mhm.
just Go that is supported so far?
Yeah, so far it's only Go. Basically, we won't be able to kind of fetch any dependencies from other languages, and also the collection side is not necessarily giving us file names we can find in source code repos. Um,
Is there a current plan for the next one, or is that more based on what people say that they are interested in?
So obviously, like it is good for people watching if they have really strong opinions. I do think that there's a good chance that we can look at maybe Java. So like we do have the line information from the async profile that we used there. There's probably a well-established way of fetching source code in Java. So I do think that there might be a good opportunity there, but like I can only say that it might not happen in the immediate roadmap. So our focus is around like fixing a couple of usability things. For example, you can see here how the repository here comes from the label name, so Grafana Pyroscope, but there's no way to edit or change it. So we basically like would require you to go into your alloy config, update the label name to be representing whatever you want. But in fact, this is a really hard thing to do, and like you won't be able to change it for profiles in the past. And let's say you have this profile, and now you think you benefit from the source code integration. We want to be able basically like that you can config in the UI as well, and make use of the information that is there.
So is that actually saying that on line 116 that pprof.do line is taking up 16.9 minutes?
So yeah, so like there's also two columns. So you can see that here self and total. So in self in a profile means what I'm consuming, and I is kind of where you are in the stack, the function we currently add. So basically, like in this case, pprof.do is not consuming anything. So you you have it basically only in the total, which is then kind of further down the line.
And that's like adding up all the different threads too, right?
Yeah, so that adds up. So basically, like I think what was confusing is because when there's no consumption, we actually group, or we have a feature to group and collapse, and that's why it was not visible here. So just for everyone's benefit, so we can also see the 16.8. Don't exactly ask me why it's 0.8 versus 0.9 in the flame graph here. And you can basically see, because the width of the flame graph is kind of the same as like in the next row. That basically like means there's no consumption or no measurable consumption within, because basically everything that the pprof.do consumes is within the next one, and that one doesn't consume anything. It's basically all pushed down to the latest kind of in the stack trace. So here is where the CPU consumption happens. So this also shows a bit of a problem that we still have. Like you will find some instances where maybe a comment even consumes CPU, and that's where we don't guess the version right of the Go. So in this case, this is a Go source code that we look into, and like we can see how nano time consumes CPU here. So I definitely think we are in the in the wrong line here. Like this is basically what I wanted to talk about, those kind of teething issues we still have. So basically the plan for the source code integration is that we make a GA in this quarter, and there's a lot of those usability things, like changing the repository, but also like making sure the alignment works. So a Go mod file, for example, in your source code base will not tell us which Go version you compiled it with. We need to kind of figure that out at collection time and then propagate it through. And then we can also, like, because currently like the whole of the standard library has that problem that you will find the wrong kind of attribution. So like you can see here's no source code line, but we do use CPU here, which is a bit suspicious. And I guess we basically just add some offset here to the correct information, because the source code we use is not the source code that actually is running. And yeah, that's one of the problems to fix.
And then if you're on the right side looking at the code, can you easily get from the code to where it is in the flame graph?
So this is also something that we have an issue for. So basically, like I find myself doing this all the time. So I clicked order car here,
Mhm.
So I can kind of figure it out here that order car is the function I clicked, but obviously I need to highlight this better. And I also think a natural way is basically going down, find nearest vehicle is obviously the native way of kind of going further down. Like right now I can't click here, or I can't easily just click here. So I need to kind of click and know where I am in the flame graph and open function details again. So this is kind of a bit of the, I don't know, I would say early UI there. So we basically want to make it a lot clearer where you are in the flame graph. The idea is to also use the sandwich view. So I clicked on the sandwich view here, which shows you a better way of all stack traces that call this particular function. So everything that calls find nearest vehicle we can see here, and that would be a great way to navigate, because obviously you know this is where I'm at right now, and you kind of know where to click next. So basically right now this is nothing working really like natively, or so I definitely think we do have some UX homework to do.
That is still quite cool, though.
Yeah,
What
no, like
happens
I
if you
definitely think
click
it.
on the
Sorry.
Sorry, what happens if you click on the optimized code?
So on the optimized code, so that is something where we actually like uh, you need to be a Grafana Cloud user, and then we would actually take the source code and the information from the flame graph and would send this kind of off to an LLM. You kind of have to opt in first, so like you might not immediately see it. If it's not configured, it will be gray and you can't click it. I guess in this case, it basically like tries to figure out from the code that like we fetch why something might be slow, or what kind of next steps there are. So I don't know, like the suggestion here is to make something a bit more asynchronous. So I don't know if that is the best idea from the LLM. So this is used to represent like an Uber style app where you order your car, and I guess in this case you kind of order your car asynchronously, and then you say your car order is processed, but you never know what the outcome is. Like, might not be the best UX, but in this case, I guess it would improve the kind of latency for the user, but obviously like in the wrong way. I think it works better with a bit more of a real example. I think this is just too much of a demo. Like it basically can kind of find common hotspots in the code. I don't know if I can.
And I think you showed that if people want to try it out, because this is not a Grafana Cloud only feature, right? Just the
So
optimized one
the
is.
optimize is a Grafana Cloud only feature, but the source code integration itself is part of OSS, and you can actually find it when you. I don't know how to maybe best give you a link, but so we have play.grafana.org as a kind of open. It's maybe not the right time to connect to YouTube so I can post a comment, but
If you see in here, if you can see this screen, you can also post it in
yeah.
here.
So I have the link now, I think. Yeah. So that's kind of the full link to pretty much the same example, just with the LLMs disabled.
Whoa, what is that?
That
I
is
don't think that's right.
fully. That's what Grafana Cloud profiles and CPU process and a random number.
Yeah. So I don't know where that came from.
Is it just to play.grafana.org? I can do that.
Yeah.
Here, so
I think it does too
it's
much.
just this one, and then this is, if for people who don't know, this is like a free public playground for anyone to use, not just for profiles actually, but for all the Grafana stack, and you don't need to sign in or anything to use it.
Yeah, so like it's a really good way of getting quick feedback for me as well. I often refer that kind of instance to friends. I can maybe quickly show you where you need to navigate to. So this is kind of the URL, and then we are profiles. So on the menu, drill down profiles. So the example I used was Pyroscope Rideshare Go. So you usually start with all services, and then if you click to the flame graph, you kind of get exactly kind of the view. You need to kind of also opt in with a GitHub connection. Worth saying, this is really only for your browser session, so no one else will have access to your GitHub once you connect it. And if you even hard reload, it will basically require you to log in again.
So, okay, you were saying that this is available for open source as well as cloud?
This is available for anyone. I'm still working on some OSS documentation right now. We basically don't really explain how to set it up in your OSS Pyroscope. I have a PR for that. I'm also trying to do this renaming of from GitHub to source code integration. Yeah, definitely like watch the space. We will have some better instructions. The kind of requirement for GitHub is you need like a GitHub app that basically like has access either to your source code or just to nothing. Because otherwise GitHub rate limits will make the experience quite quickly being a rate limited one to fetch all that source code that you would need. And then basically like if this would have like this is just open source code, you will find it kind of when you click here. It's just directly on the internet. But even if we would have if we wanted to show private code here, that also works with the GitHub integration. You basically like need to allow it to read source code, but then as soon as you connect, you can read the source code.
So I was seeing like how to find this if you're looking at Grafana Cloud. So you're saying right now there isn't exactly an easy way to look up like how to go through this if you're doing it on the open source side, or can you mostly
Yeah, so
follow
like
the cloud?
on the open source, the experience is exactly the same how to open it, but the operator of Pyroscope needs to configure a few things, and they're not exactly documented right now.
Okay.
And so
That's new. Yeah.
there's basically like if you're on the GitHub for Pyroscope, I have basically this PR here. It is draft, so it needs a bit more work. But basically, like, yeah, we want to make this easy. It was basically just an oversight that we didn't really have a good documentation page for this yet.
So is it already something that's like enabled by default, or do you have to specifically enable it? Is it like a feature flag?
So in OSS, you basically need to configure something on the back end. Yeah, when you use kind of Grafana Cloud, then it is enabled by default, and I guess you need to currently set the labels that I mentioned, the service repository and service Git reference, in order to find the source code. But from then on, it will just show up, like I guess in the function details here.
Yeah, and I was looking at the docs notes mentioning that for at least on cloud, that for now you need to contact Grafana support to during private preview to get access to and then enable it.
Yeah, I don't know. It should just work. So there's like it can be switched off here in the settings. Sorry, I'm not sharing the right tab. So I do think it should be enabled by default. That might have been an outdated information. But let's check that afterwards. There's basically also you can disable it here as within the settings of profile drill down if you're not comfortable with the feature, I guess. But it is kind of default enabled.
So at the GrafanaCon keynote, a lot of things were announced for Grafana 12, and one of them was Git Sync. Are there plans to integrate that with this GitHub integration?
Yeah, so like we definitely don't want to reinvent the wheel there, and I think that's I guess the name change came with the idea that we basically want to support anything that Grafana supports, I guess, for the Git sync. So we really kind of need mostly I don't know, like give me the file tree for this commit hash, and then giving me this file or that file. And so this is kind of very close to like what GitSync kind of needs from its integrations. So I definitely think there's a lot of synergy. Like, so we realized the synergy, but right now it is kind of our really own code, I guess, for GitHub. But I do think like we would like to be basically make use of like all the kind of supported backends for Git that exist for GitSync. But this is not a status quo.
And then like how right now it has like the optimize code, and so can you also do like with how with the flame graphs in general, how you can get it to use I guess not for the I'm not sure about I guess for the cloud version where you can get it to describe the flame graph, can you still get it to describe things? Oh yeah, explain flame graph. Okay.
Yeah, so like basically like the let me maybe just go back to the kind of plain flame graph. So I guess the first step is basically like here the explain flame graph. This really does not have information about the source code, so it will not be able to kind of make code suggestions. And so I guess once you read through this and like here the LLM says basically the main reason for this bottleneck is with this function, and then by connecting to GitHub, obviously you can get that function, and now I guess the suggestions can be a bit more specific to the code, because obviously it has the source code. It roughly knows like I guess what it does currently. And obviously, like the whole example is a bit flawed in the sense that we do time sleep in order to make this slow and make this appear on the CPU. And so I guess that's the explanation why it's slow. So like definitely the LLM is not wrong there. But once we kind of stop removing this, the demo doesn't work so well anymore because just returning vehicles without looking for them is just not enough of CPU work. But yeah.
If you scroll back up in the code, does it highlight the time dot sleep? So is it just like is this the code before it with the time dot sleep, or is this removing it?
I do think this is like the code as it is
Okay.
right now, and I
I
basically
guess.
like.
Do you know? I guess it's LLM, so there's only so much you can do with it. But do you know if there's any plans to add stuff like to show in this thing, hey, what line number it's at, or making it more visible? Because you have to go find the time dot sleep, for instance. Like if there's any plans to make it a little bit simpler to find where it is in that.
Yeah, like right now, I guess the kind of view
Light.
here is really basic, I guess. So I think we definitely could improve that. Like for example, right now, if you're used to the PR review kind of thing in GitHub, you could obviously like I just want to see line 53 now, and I obviously can't. I need to go to GitHub and then I can look it up. So I think right now this is just too kind of simple, I guess. We basically only try to kind of show the find nearest function, I guess.
And then so for like this one, it shows that there's like multiple it shows it just in that time frame basically of the lines that are if you go up so it shows like basically does it show everything that's just taking like more than X amount of time, or like how is it deciding specifically which things it's showing that there is time for? Like right now you have 2 lines there that are showing that it's
So
taking.
like I guess these are the only ones that we have profile collected. I guess this is maybe also so obviously the function goes a bit further down, but this is another another function call with an anonymous function in the argument. So I think that's why, like in theory, I would expect this to show the whole func and a couple of lines before and after.
And then where is the okay, so this one is using the time dot sleep, but you can't see the time dot sleep that's happening up in there because it's calling. Okay.
So like I guess we so we are in this tag wrapper, and because it doesn't understand that this is still part of the function, it doesn't show it. It's a very specific problem. So you can see how this is a function call within the argument of another function call.
Yeah.
And the time sleep happens in there. So I think that's kind of why that source code is not shown, because we basically like focus only on that function, and then the tag wrapper, I guess would come. yeah, so like I guess the so sorry, I'm just trying to find the one.
Yeah, because I'm curious where it is where it has that one and then it actually has like the sleep that's showing that the sleep is taking that time.
So I guess now we are in the track wrapper. So like you can see how this is represented in the stack graph. So like, and here you can. Let's just. Sorry. So like, because I guess this is another stack in when the kind of argument gets called here. That's kind of why we see it within the tag wrapper, which calls the function argument. And I'm still like not 100% sure.
And then when you click the view it on GitHub, does it just go to GitHub and for that code in general, or does it actually highlight? Because I can't see. I don't know if you're just sharing a tab or.
Yeah, so like when I share that tab, it basically that's where it gets you.
Okay. So it does jump to the line.
So I guess it jumps to a line, and then I guess because so I guess if this gets kind of executed here, it kind of executes the tag wrapper, and then the tag wrapper itself calls the function kind of supplied here in the argument. That's kind of like why this is kind of following like these kind of steps in the. So I don't know if you can see. So this is then the implementation of the tag wrapper.
Code.
Oh yeah, sorry.
For your find nearest vehicle.
Yeah, sorry. So I guess when I now go here, so we can see the find nearest vehicle. Then we kind of spent the majority of time in the tag wrapper. That's also, I guess, what the flame graph tells us. And then the tag wrapper itself calls pprofdo and passes on another callback function. And so that's kind of how you now jump through all of those levels. So in pprofdo, you can see how then the actual function that we pass gets called with f context. All of this uses kind of the same amount of CPU, so nothing is kind of wasted, I guess, in those layers. And then I guess we are in this function that gets created here, and then we are kind of finally in the outer function, and that is where the kind of sleep happens by the for loop, I guess, that checks if I've slept long enough, I guess. And so when we now, I guess, want to kind of or here you can also kind of see the split between, so like I guess some of this is kind of spent in time since, so 16%, or like not, or 3.84 minutes is spent in time since, and 12.9 minutes is spent in the check driver availability here.
And what's the samples? When you were hovering over the flame graph, yeah, like the.
Yeah, right now it's basically like the second equivalent. Like right now, this is the wrong number, I think, so needs to be ignored. I'm sorry. And so like you can kind of basically like this is kind of the first bit of the sleeps, and then we call check driver, so we're trying to find a driver for the car that we're ordering. And then when you kind of go further down, you will also find that this is basically just another sleep hidden when finding the driver. Do like hope I didn't lose you somewhere between the different level.
If people are playing with this and they are like, "Ooh, it'd be really cool if X," what's the best way for people to like share things that they think would be neat to add to this?
Yeah, no, so definitely creating GitHub issue on Grafana Pyroscope is usually the best way. I think if you're unsure how to formulate the problem that you experiences, which happens to me all the time, definitely feel free to like erase it in your own words in the Slack channel first. Like we are pretty active in Grafana Slack Pyroscope channel, so that's usually, I would say, the kind of best way of getting a feel for that problem, and then like we can help direct, I don't know, whether issue should be created, what exactly goes wrong. And I definitely think like one of the problem of those kind of demo applications is you don't see a real problem in the sense. We created a problem and now we find the problem we created. And in most cases in the real world, we create the problem, but we are not aware of the problem. Right? Just, I don't know, we're writing some code 5 years ago and that now becomes a problem. And so I definitely think the best way to kind of approach this would be enabling it on an application you run and maybe get some users using it, because I think that's where you will get the extra insights. Here we basically just get reminded how we implemented the demo, and obviously, like the easiest way would be removing the sleeps, and we kind of reduced quite a lot of CPU consumption through that. And I guess that's what the LLM suggests here too, I guess.
I think you also wanted to run us through what else is going to come out in version 2.0.
Yeah, so like maybe just briefly. So I guess the kind of key improvements that we want to do, and like I guess we saw them with me clicking through the through the source code integration. So we want to be better at navigating and seeing where in the code we are. We want to be able to configure the repository URL and the Git reference within the UI. And basically, right now, there's some various bugs when you kind of enter the source code view from the diff view, for example. Like we want to fix them. Like there's a few problems preventing that, but basically, we want to make the kind of whole experience a bit more polished. And I guess like just by me clicking through it, we can see why. I think this will be a good improvement to the whole thing. Separately, when we've, as I said, we were also kind of talking about what we want to achieve for Periscope 2.0. So we are currently at 1.13.4, I think, and something that my colleague Anton has worked on extensively the last probably not 12 months, I guess, is a new storage layer. So we currently kind of start rolling this out within Grafana Cloud, and we basically like need to do a few steps to make this accessible for OSS. So to have a nicer migration path than we currently have, and basically the idea between that storage, and I think this probably will be at least 2 to 3 of those 1 hour sessions to kind of explain the whole architecture. But on a high level view, we basically found a couple of limitations in the way the current architecture we want works. So it is heavily aligned to how Loki and Cortex Mimir works. But the biggest downside is we kind of keep data at replicas. So like we kind of every kind of profile we send, we kept 3 times, and then when it comes to querying, we also need to reduce those 3 back down to 1, because we obviously don't want to show 3 times the profiles you send to us. And that kind of caused a lot of kind of friction, a lot of bottlenecks as well in the way. Like I guess we kind of had to deduplicate this, and Storage V2 will solve a lot of those things. We kind of are quite optimistic how far it's running. So currently it runs all the profiles for Grafana Labs. For a couple of months, we kind of saw quite a bit of cost savings as well, but also the performance a lot more reproducible, and like it should allow us to kind of be a lot more dynamic with scaling the read path, which then will allow longer profile queries, more profile queries, faster profile queries. That is the kind of thing that I hope we deliver to OSS users as well. Yeah, so basically, like the TLDR, how we achieve that is by moving a lot of the data out of kind of the persistent volume storage from V1. So like ingesters have like, I don't know, the last hour of profiles, and we query from them, and we kind of move that a lot quicker onto the object store, and then also we compact it a lot sooner. So for example, we will basically push every profile within half a second to object store, and then we will compact it within 10 seconds, and then when we query it, it will always come from object store. It will not be on anyone's memory or disk, ideally. So that's kind of the general idea behind it. So
So
I think
this is the Kafka-esque architectural
yeah, so
change, right?
we can definitely call it like Kafkaesque. It is like maybe we describe it like a write ahead log in object store maybe. So we're not using Kafka anywhere in the system right now, and we're not compatible with Kafka. So even if you wanted to kind of use it, that's nothing we've done so far as part of the work. So it still will be, you will have to give us an object store or your local disk for a one replica setup, and we will basically like treat it all like object store, rather than some part of it we treat it as files on block disk, where we can kind of easily seek into files and jump back and forth all the time. Everything will basically be with kind of object store in mind, and like, I guess, less random access than I guess we done before, especially for the most recent profiles.
And will version 2 also already have storage tiering, or will that be a future one?
Maybe you need to explain a bit what you mean exactly with storage tiering.
Well, I was thinking, like, I think it had been mentioned. Also, so for context for everyone watching, the three of us were at a databases offsite, an internal one last week, and I think I remember that there was some talk about storage tiering in the sense of the most recent data is kept in a fast storage, and then older data is kept in a lower tier, basically that's less fast, but it's cheaper to have stored on there. And I wasn't sure if that's something that will be implemented already.
So, like, I guess right now it is not implemented, but I guess most of the implementation will be a bit as part of the lifecycle rules of your object store, rather than, I guess, inside our code. Obviously, we maybe need to manage those. But yeah, in theory, it's possible, like, to kind of, like, we have slightly different prefixes based on, like, I guess, where in the system you are. So basically, in the very first 10 seconds, we will have something like basically a block per the scale of the system you run, rather than a block per tenant. So that's kind of important for us, because we basically, like, if we have to create more objects per tenant very early on, we create quite a lot of objects if we create one every half second, and that will be a major cost driver. And so in the first compaction, I guess that gets thrown around, and this might be a good, like, might be a good reason to think about the tiering in terms of compaction levels, maybe. But yeah, like right now we've not even experimented ourselves with it, so I don't think we like we'll have a feature by the 2.0 release.
Well, I guess in a way it is already tiered, right? Because there's still the ingestion layer. So I believe that profiles will still be stored on the local SSD on ingesters, and then there's like a warm tier where it's flushed to object storage. Are you
So
just
like that's
doing
not
away?
so we basically kind
Okay.
of go completely away with the local storage. So that
Ah, so it's just
there is
directly
metadata
to object.
information that is on local storage, but that's kind of everything. And right now we kind of rely that metadata storage doesn't go away, but until 2.0 we want to be able to also have that kind of longer term storage in object store. So right now we basically have like that meta store, yeah, basically it relies on local disks to kind of like load its previous snapshot into memory when it starts up again. Let's say that you shut it down over the weekend and now you want to be back where you are. You need to read the snapshot and then you have it in memory again. And we basically want to be able to do this from object store instead. But that's kind of the
Interesting.
only place
Okay.
where we use local disks. Maybe my colleagues shout in the chat if that's not true, but pretty confident. And yeah, so basically like profile data we get the profile request, and we basically will only say, okay, 200 accepted once it hit the object store. And then, so that would mean you would never query it from anywhere else, I guess, than object store. You will query from memory the fact that there is a profile that you should read from object store. So that's kind of what we have in memory is the metadata. But the kind of actual profiling data will always be as soon as we accepted it in kind of the upload request, it will be an object store. So I guess we also want to do kind of a few cleanups. So currently, when you kind of do Docker run Pyroscope, you see the old UI from 0.37 version. It is still working. I guess the API compatibility, we don't plan to change this. So we maybe want to kind of remove it and kind of replace it something with more that looks like profiles drill down. Or we make a very big note that you should move to profiles drill down. So we are not 100%. So that was the thing that was a bit contentious in the last week with the team. So I think we kind of people started moving half votes from one option to the other, and so we clearly saw that then we need to experiment a bit more what we really think is best ourselves, and then we definitely think we can't maintain the old UI anymore. But we would love to have a UI when you've not yet fully set up Grafana, but just to kind of see profiles. I think that is where the UI is currently pretty good at. So somewhere between bundling Grafana on demand when you kind of want it, or basically keeping the old UI and making very clear that it will really go away in V3 and you should migrate to Grafana itself. So I guess there's a few things we want to clean up. Like we have flags that are slightly not aligned with each other, especially in that new V2 kind of configuration. We also want to release dashboards, alerts, runbooks. This is something we heard quite a lot from the community, and we would really love to kind of share the work we put in right now. There's only a few things where it's very Grafana Lab specific, and everything else just relies on our metrics. And we would like to kind of be able to share this with OSS users. Yeah, so the diskless microservices mode, that's basically what I mentioned, to be able to kind of read the snapshot from object store instead of the disks right now. Yeah, timeline autumn 2025. So we didn't put an exact date towards it.
So just for people who are maybe in different hemispheres, we're talking about September.
Yeah, sorry, that maybe was. Yeah, so we basically talking about OpsCon in Grafana Lab speak. So that probably gives us end of September, beginning of October. Not exactly sure about the date right now, but yeah, that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Cool. Sounds like a lot of changes.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of changes happening. We also remember we are not the biggest team, so obviously profiles is pretty new. That's so I guess around 10 people I think work on this. Definitely let us know where we definitely need to pick and choose where we focus on. We can't do it all, I guess, and I do think we have a good plan, where to focus on, I guess, next quarter for the 2.0. But definitely let us know if you don't think so, and if you have some kind of big problems, basically where you can't adopt Pyroscope because of those. We're definitely keen to help you on this.
I had a question about the function level profiles. I know the last time I looked into Pyroscope, there was a tempo integration where execution level profiles had been baked into the traces, so you could see the profiles on that level. Is there a plan to do the same with the function level profiles for tempo?
So I guess the function level is more like a thing we would do on top of the profiling data. So I guess we want to kind of export everyone who calls that function. And if it happens that it's a function that is also associated with a trace, that information will be available. Like, but I guess like it's nothing I guess you would necessarily see from when you come from traces. So currently the correlation basically works. You would look at a trace, and if that trace has been using the CPU like enough to be seen by the profiler, so or basically the profiler will only see things that run on the CPU. If in our example you saw, we did not use time sleep. We used like a self-written time sleep where we kind of check the time all the time. And if the time has already elapsed by n seconds, for example. And that obviously causes a lot of CPU usage. So every time you need to get the time and check it. While maybe something like time sleep doesn't, because the CPU just knows I don't have to check anything for 5 seconds and then come back to you. And so we only see things that happen on the CPU in CPU profiles. And so in order for us to see a trace, the trace needs to have been active right at that time when we look at the CPU. And we can't look at the CPU all the time because that would be too expensive. So we look at the CPU around 100 times a second. And so if a trace is, for example, 1 millisecond long, we only look at the CPU every 10 milliseconds. So it's very unlikely we find it exact in that moment. So I guess the chance is maybe 10%. I don't know if the maths is correct in practice, but like so basically like that's always what you need to keep in mind, I guess, with the traces to profiles correlation. And then if that happens to be collected and someone created a rule to export this function name into metrics, then this will be included in there. We basically like this kind of just comes directly from the profiling information.
And then I don't know if you've talked about it before, but I think there's also an integration with K6, right? K6 and Pyroscope, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so like I might not be able to kind of quickly demo something there, but
Oh no,
it's
that's
basically
fine.
about kind of um, pushing the information through. So like having an idea, this was part of this test run in K6, and this is the profile for it. And we saw the tag wrapper when we looked into the function call for the car vehicle, and a bit like that, we can basically attach any label to a code path you might run or to the whole program running. And then as soon as it's seen running on the CPU, it will be kind of associated with it. And that's kind of similar for K6, where we basically like, this is test ID 10, and this is the test name, or like information like that can be passed through basically to be shown in the kind of profiles labels. So yeah, I don't know. I really couldn't find anything now. Quickly going through it, but yeah. So like it will just show up as a label, name value pair.
Yeah, that can be super useful because, it's kind of difficult sometimes. You have to test in production, right? And when you do, you want to know what type of load was associated with that particular pattern of CPU consumption. For example, you might see a spike, but then you see that we were trying to spike CPU because of a load test or something. So it can be nice to have that metadata attached as well,
Yeah,
just
no,
to be able
this is
to.
really powerful attribution. So
Yeah.
when you actually enable the kind of traces and profiles at the same time, we actually also do that on a span name level. So like that will be there
Oh,
by
nice.
default. So and often span names kind of are somewhat associated with the slash get or get slash orders or whatever kind
Yeah.
of HTTP endpoints you expose, and that's definitely helpful. Like always worth remembering, not everything is kind of necessarily tagged with it. So I guess in Go, a garbage collector language, you will still have to do garbage collection, and that will not be like associated necessarily with those tags if you do more in one call. But obviously the directly kind of connected CPU usage is covered by that, and I find that a quite powerful way of looking at it.
Cool. Was there anything in particular, Christian, that you're interested in seeing, like that you're excited to see in Pyroscope?
So I can't really promise when that will be, but I definitely think
I just
one
said tomorrow, so
like yeah, like I think as soon as possible. Now something I'm excited about is like the kind of integrations between the databases, and going from traces to profiles is good, but I also mentioned the limitation with, like, it needs to be enough CPU. Sometimes, like, obviously our demos maybe are a bit more designed to use enough CPU to make that work. In practice, it might only hit like 1% out of your requests. And I guess right now, like, you can't say, hey, Tempo, give me traces that also have been profiled. And so you kind of end up having a lot of traces to click through to then find one where you actually have a profile on. And I would love to have that information a bit more closer to it, and that we only show the button to show me profiles when there's actually a profile, because right now the experience is basically maybe only maybe 10%, maybe 1% of those button clicks will work. And obviously this is kind of frustrating
Mm.
for the user. And at the same time, I also want to do it the other way around. I guess obviously we have information about profiles and we know what traces have been prominent in CPU usage. They might not necessarily be showing like high latency or any particularly other flags that you would look at it from the tempo side. And so it would be interesting to surface those and then open from the profiling side in tempo.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool because, like, right now, say for instance, you can go in Tempo and just look up everything that has errors, but being able to just look up everything that has profiles would be pretty
Yeah,
cool.
so that's definitely like the kind of longer term vision, I think, that we have. I think for a start, I think it will be something more like the button will no longer show up, which is a good improvement already. But then obviously, like having this within the search, I think would be pretty powerful, and would definitely like help that process of finding something where you maybe want to kind of reduce CPU usage.
Awesome. This was super cool. And yeah, thanks for doing this. And thanks for everyone who showed up. If you have questions or want to talk or anything like that, you should come join us in the Grafana community Slack. So slack.grafana.com. And yeah, so hope everyone has a good rest of your morning, evening, or whatever time it is. All right. See you all.
thanks everyone. See
Thanks
you.
everyone for joining. Bye.